Getting to grips with agents. Hi, I'm Ray Poynter. I'm going to be the lead presenter today, and I will be joined by Will Poynter, who will be looking after any comments or queries that are going on during the presentation, and then Will join me for the Q&A at the end of the presentation. So here's the agenda for today. We're going to have a look a little bit at what agents are, but mostly we're going to be spending our time looking at how we can create agents using the large language models. Then going to have a quick look at agentic browsers and also at the brand new feature from ChatGPT, which is ChatGPT Agent Mode. And then we're going to have an extended Q&A session, I hope. So what do I mean by agents? AI agents are autonomous software programs designed to perform tasks or make decisions based on data inputs. They're things that do things for us. They leverage large language models, the sorts of ones we're looking at in this context, and other AI models to interact with systems, with users, with other agents. Autonomous agents can generate tasks for themselves and take actions without any human intervention at all. And that's kind of where we're heading with this. Unlike just ordinary generative AI, agents combine reasoning, memory, and autonomy to complete tasks and objectives beyond just content generation. So this is the sort of thing I'm talking about. This is where we're going to come to at the end of the presentation, ChatGPT in agent mode. But I'm just going to expand the options that it gives us. So we can use it to order a pizza. We can use it to create a list on Google Maps of various things. We can ask it to order some kebabs. We can ask it to audit our calendar based on the last 6 months and produce a task list. It can get much more involved. It can open things. It can power things. It can actually pay for things with some caveats. So when we talk about agents, they differ in the level of autonomy. So a basic agent just generates some text back, and we're going to see that when we look at things like the data checker that I'll be showing you shortly. The next level of autonomy is where it can pick different paths. And when we're using deep research and when we're using reasoning, in most of the large language models now have a reasoning option, that's what's going on there. It's taking different routes depending on what it thinks the best method of solving it is. The next one is tool calling, when it can decide which tools to use. So it's not just doing the things that it can do, but it's calling actions from other places. The next pattern beyond that is multi-agent pattern, where the agent calls other agents. They all run in parallel to achieve the task and report back. And then finally, we get fully autonomous agents. They independently plan, they execute, they're triggered by different things. Now, some of these autonomous agents we're already familiar with. So your virus protection email scanning tool is an autonomous agent. It's reading all of your emails in the background as they're coming in. If it spots that something malicious is in it, it will quarantine it, it'll put it into the quarantine, and it will send you a message saying that this has been spotted, it was this type of problem, and it's been put in quarantine. It might also send a message to the sender of that message as well. So those are what I mean by autonomous. They happen without us having to call or invoke them. And within the world of market research, I started to think about how might we use agents. Secondary research, finding stuff, project design, booking in a project. Some of these things are already happening. You've got tools out there that will book respondents to take part in online data collection, for example. And the data collection can be agent-based. Synthetic data can be agent-based. Story finding can be, the reporting and the presenting. We can go beyond that to implementation. So an agent might actually commission product A, or it might update the brand image, or it might order more X and reduce the price. All of these factors, campaign optimization and A/B testing. So I almost wonder, what can't an AI agent do? And I would love, over the next 20 minutes or so, when I'm going through this presentation, just for you to type into the chat, what sorts of things do you think an AI agent can't do now and won't be able to do within, let's say, the next couple of years? Just by the nature of the task, which sorts of things can't it do? So we are going to be looking today mostly at no-code agents. So the most powerful agents are created using code, things like Python. So if we think about that virus scanning and email checking tool that most of you have on your computers, that wasn't written in an LLM, it was written with code. But you can get a good sense of what agents can do by creating them in Copilot, Gemini, ChatGPT, Claude, etc. And generally, we call this no code as an approach. So the starting point, probably before you even write your first agent, would be to look at some pre-built agents. So if you go into ChatGPT, you can go to the ChatGPT store and find all sorts of pre-built agents that you can just use, mostly for free. So I've selected one here called the Negotiator. I think this is quite a nice one. I pick it and then it asks me to start the chat. And so I type in, my client wants to conduct a research study and wants to use quantitative method. I believe a qualitative method would be much better. How might I change her mind? I hit enter and it comes back with all sorts of suggestions. For example, clarify the interests and goals, ask open questions, listen actively, build a shared understanding, anchor her criteria, propose mutually beneficial packages, use objective criteria, frame it as a risk management, be ready to concede and trade. And it will actually generate a Q&A tool for you if you want, where you can practice having this conversation. And that's a pre-built tool based principally around instructions. And I'm going to explain what we mean by instructions in a moment. So what I'm going to do is create a data checking agent. I want to be able to upload a data file from a survey and find out if there are any problems with the data. And I'm going to do this example in Gemini. So I log into my Gemini account. I go over to what Gemini calls gems, which are the equivalent of agents. They're the equivalent of custom GPTs. So I go over there and that takes me through to the gem manager. Now I'm going through this at speed, but don't try to memorize everything. How do I find the gem manager? Ask Perplexity. Have a free account with Perplexity. It's great for giving you up-to-date modern knowledge. So whenever you want to know, how do I do this in Gemini? How do I do this in Copilot? How do I do this in ChatGPT? My recommendation is just ask Perplexity. And then we're going to select new gem because we want to create one of these gems. We give it a name. I'm going to call this Data Checker 3 because I've done data checkers before. And then we need to give it the instructions. And that's almost the only thing we need for this particular agent. So I tell it that it's an expert data processor. They've been chosen to check the quality of data files. This sort of nice talk seems to improve the way the agent functions. You should expect a file where the first row is a header, naming the fields. The rest of the rows should be one for each respondent. I want you to check whether there are duplicate rows. Are there any cells with missing data? Identify any cells whose values don't conform to the expected data type. Is there any personally identifiable information? Are there any data quality issues? And then I tell it in the instructions, it should output to the user the name of the file, the number of rows, the number of columns and fields, and the names of the fields. Then it should report on the data quality issues, and then it should offer to fix the issues. So I click Save. in Gemini, and that is going to generate and create this data checker for me. So it tells me that it's created the data checker, and then I'm going to run it. So I've uploaded a data file, and I ask it to check this file. It runs that agent and it says, okay, the file name is the Disney data from Kaggle. There are just over 42,000 rows. It's got 6 columns, and here are the columns. Then it starts listing the data quality issues, and it tells me that in the date column there's quite a lot of missing data, in particular the word missing being typed into it. And it will then give me all of the other issues. What is the benefit of having an agent as opposed to simply typing in that instruction as part of the prompt? Well, it can be shared with all of the people in your Google workspace. So we can spread it around the organization if we're a Google shop. Every person in the team can use the same checking process. So we're going to standardize that. Not only that, but when we find out that we can improve the instructions, we change the wording so it catches more problems, it's immediately available to everybody in the whole team. We don't have to say, oh, remember that prompt you've got pasted in your list of prompts, change it to say this. It will just change. So it simply becomes a straightforward process. Have you run the agent to check the data before you've analyzed it? And as we move forward, we can see a time when the checker is going to be invoked automatically. So when we upload data, it will run. We're not there yet, but that's where we're going. So I just want to give you almost the same example, but running it in Claude, because it really doesn't matter for a lot of these things which of the platforms you're using. So I'm going to use a different data file. We've got a data file here with 9 rows. It's only got 3 columns, and there are quite a few problems in this very small data file. So it's great for testing. So I've logged into my Claude account. I go to projects this time. So I'm going to create a personal project. I'm going to call it Data Checker. I've got a description. I click on Create Project. I then paste in the instructions, and they are exactly the same instructions that I pasted into Gemini. And I have previously pasted them into ChatGPT. I've previously pasted them into Copilot. It works for all of those. And then I'm going to tell it to create the model. Then I run it on the data, and it comes back and it does exactly the same sort of things. It tells me that there are 9 rows, including the header. Here are the columns, that there's a missing data for the NPS. It's spotted that there's personally identifiable data in rows 6 and 9. It then will list all the data quality concerns. So we're going to get this standardization. This is the essence of using agents. Now, in Claude, we could expand that. So a project is what is called a persistent agent. So when we log in next time, it's still there. That's basic. That's what we really need with an agent. But we can create shareable agents by asking Claude to create an app. And in Claude, you just type that in. Please create this project as an app that I can share with other people. And it will create the code for that. Creates quite a nice interface. One of the nicer things about Claude compared with most of the other LLMs is it creates nicer usability experiences, a nicer interface. And then I can share that link to the data quality checker around. So the next thing I'm going to do is add knowledge. So we use just a set of instructions in the data checker. Now I want to bring in knowledge. So I'm going to talk about using a questionnaire house style. So let's imagine with the company Acme, we have a house style. This is what all of our questionnaires should look like. The agent is going to offer 2 choices to us. It's going to say, do you want to check a questionnaire against the house style, or do you want to create a questionnaire? And we're going to use Copilot, but again, we could have used any of the major platforms. So I'm in Copilot, I click on Agents, it drops down the Agents menu, and down the bottom of there is Create an Agent. But in Copilot, I could also have used Copilot Studio. There are often different ways, and again, if you can't remember how to create an agent in Copilot, just type into Perplexity, how do I create agents in Copilot? Are there different ways of creating agents? And it will tell you about the different ways. So it creates this page here. Now, a lot of the platforms give you the option of building an agent by describing what you want it to do or by configuring it. We find it's much more useful to use the configure option. So I would normally have that set to configure. I give it a name, I give it a description. On the right hand side, there's an area where we can test the agent before we actually build it. And again, most of the platforms have something similar. So we're going to give it instructions and we're going to give it knowledge. And again, most of them that have got knowledge will have something like this slider down the bottom. Prioritize the knowledge sources you add for the agent. If we are putting in knowledge, we want it to use that before it uses anything else. So you want to make sure that is set. Then we're going to give it the instructions. So we tell it's a survey designer and we tell it to ask which of the two routes are we going to take? Are we going to be checking a questionnaire, in which case this is what we do? Or are we going to create a questionnaire in that case, this is what we do? And then we have the house style. So I've created this house style. I've got it now in a PDF file. I'm going to upload that PDF file with all of these bits and pieces that we have created as the house style. Now that is in the agent we're building. We've got the list of the uploaded files. We could have multiple uploaded files in there. We could have banks of previous questions we have used as part of that knowledge. So not just the style, but here is a list of permitted questions. Here is a list of questions we don't ask and why would also be a useful thing. You can get quite a lot of information in there. Certainly 100,000 words is pretty safe. 10 files, 20 files, depending on which platform you're using. That then generates the agent that we can run. And so I'm going to test it. I'm going to choose the option to create a questionnaire. My client wants to test 3 new TV commercials for the UK sports drink. We plan to use an online survey with regular drinkers of the brand. Each cell will see 1 commercial and then rate it. Generate a questionnaire for me. The sample will be 50-50 men and women, people aged 21 to 65. It comes back and the top half of the screen is just repeating back to me what I said to confirm that's okay. But then it asks me some more questions. What are the main objectives of the ad test? Was it be branding, persuasion, and so on? Do you want to include any normative or benchmark questions? Should we include any open-ended questions for qualitative feedback? Are there any specific metrics or KPIs your client wants to track? So I answer those questions and I give it some yeses and nos and some bits and pieces, and then it will go away and it will create a questionnaire. Now, you should never use the questionnaire it generates as the questionnaire. You should hope that it's going to be 80% right, 90% right, and then you're just going to be doing a few tweaks to get it exactly right. But you are going to achieve much better standardization across your organization, between officers, between individuals, if you take this sort of house style and agent approach, and it's going to be less work. We can expand this house style approach. So if we've got multiple clients, maybe we want a different house style for each client. Maybe we want a different house style for each type of project. If we do usability testing, if we do trackers, if we do ad tests, maybe we want for each one. We can also have house styles for the briefs, if we're client side, for proposals, if we're agency side. We can have house styles for creating discussion guides. We can have house styles for creating reports. We can't currently have a good house style for creating PowerPoints because none of the LLMs are frankly good at controlling PowerPoint yet. But that will come. Now I'm going to add an action. We've got instructions and we've got knowledge, but now I'm going to say I want it to do something beyond its own powers and capabilities. So we're going to do this one in ChatGPT. So I click on the GPTs and I tell it that I want to create a GPT. And then I give it an icon, a cute little book, and I've called this one Book Query with the Google Books API. So Google Books API is a standalone program that you can call. I've chosen this one for the demonstration because it doesn't require authorization. Normally, when you are creating an agent that's going to call an API, you will have some sort of API key that is unique to you and needs to be kept secret, and that's not very good for a demonstration online. So I'm using this one because it doesn't need an API key. The instruction is, if the user asks about books, authors, or ISBN numbers, always call the Google Book lookup action, passing the relevant search phrase provided by the user. And we can create, and this is true of all the other agents as well, conversation starters. So this helps people if they're not quite sure how to use your agent, how to do it. So I might have, for this one, tell me about 1984, tell me about IQ 84, and also tell me which book starts with Call Me Ishmael. We don't have any knowledge in this one. One of the nice things about building agents, which are called custom GPTs or just GPTs, on ChatGPT, is that you can specify which model they run, or you can specify that the user at runtime can choose the model. If I build a GPT that uses the O3 model, it will be very good and very slow. If I choose a model that uses the 4.0, it's going to run a lot faster and usually be good enough. So I'm configuring some more options. I absolutely do not want it to use web search because I want it to only use the Google API. And I'm going to create a new option. Now this is more complex than the stuff I've shown you so far because I've said no code, and technically that's a schema. It's not code, but it looks a lot like code to me. I got that code by asking ChatGPT, what is the code for calling the Google Books API that I need to insert in a GPT? And I could have asked Perplexity as well, and it gives me the commands that I need to put in here. And then right at the bottom, I need to put a privacy policy to be consistent with using these calls. Then I'm going to create it, and when I create it, I decide who's going to have access. I could make it just me, I could make it everybody in my organization, or I could make something that everybody with a ChatGPT account could run. So I'm going to now test it. So I've created it. I'm going to click on that conversation starter. Which book starts with Call Me Ishmael? And it says, okay, that's Moby Dick, first published in 1851. Do I want the details? Yes. So it now is going to call the API. It asks me about permission because we're branching out. We're now using somebody else's API entirely. It says, do I want to allow it? Do I always want to allow it? Do I want to decline it? And it gives me some feedback. And it tells me to only do this for sites that I trust. When I do that, it starts pulling back information, and it shows me 3 different editions that I could access, how long they are, who published them, and so on. I'm not going to demonstrate this because we've demonstrated in a couple of the other sessions that we've done before, and you look it up, but I just want to talk about it, using agents to create synthetic personas. So if I've done a focus group with 6 people, I could create 6 agents, 1 for each of the people. In the knowledge, I would, for each one of them, I would put the transcript from the focus group. In the instructions, I would say, okay, this is Gina from the focus group. I want you to behave as if you were Gina. Look at every question you're asked, have a look at everything Gina said, and decide whether or not you can tell me what she probably would have said to this question. If you can't tell from the transcript what she would have said, tell me you can't tell me. And the instructions would be like that. And I would then create 6 personas Each one of them is a synthetic person, and we can then go ahead that way. Similarly, if we have done a major segmentation study, so we've collected 1,200 interviews, and that has told us that there are 5 segments, and we've then done some qualitative information, and we've written up what these people are like, we could create an agent for each one of these 5 segments, these 5 personas. We'd use all of that data as the knowledge. The instructions would be on how to behave as that person, and we can then supply our users, our end users, the stakeholders, with an interactive tool where they can talk to the segments and get responses back. And those would be implemented as agents. So I just want to finish off with 2 topics. The first of these is agentic browsers. And these are brand new. There are a few that have been around for a while. They're not that well known, but Perplexity has launched Comet, and this is really making waves. It's incredibly expensive to get your hands on at the moment. It's only available for the $200 a month option, but it's going to become cheaper, and we are going to see all of the other browsers, all of the other LLMs coming up with something similar very soon. So this is what you need to be looking for. And I'm going to talk you through this mocked up version of the Perplexity screen. I have logged into my LinkedIn account. I have logged into my Salesforce account, and I've logged into my Google Ads account. So I have put in all of my credentials just like I would do if I were using Chrome, or if I was using Safari. I would log into them and then I could keep going in and out. But because this is an agentic browser, it can access those accounts too. And I can ask it to do things like pause my Google Ads campaign for over £50 daily spend. Analysing campaign spend and preparing to pause the campaigns exceeding. So I've given it an instruction. Because I'm logged in, it has given Google an instruction to pause those campaigns. Open the lead details in Salesforce. So it switches to the Salesforce tab and it loads the lead details with there. I've told it, show me the latest connection requests. It's gone into my LinkedIn and it's pulled up through these 3 requests, and I could ignore or accept. Now, just let it sink in about how many security risks we run. We could be spending money. We could be posting inappropriate content in social media. So obviously there's a whole new range of things that are worrying. But this is going to enable you with an agentic browser to automate more and more things. So these agents can do a much more expanded version. And so we'll take that forward a bit more, and we'll talk about ChatGPT's agent mode. So this was launched on the 17th of July. So what's that, about 13 days ago? And this is making enormous waves. So it combines deep research with Operator and a virtual computer. And it's described as very powerful and very dangerous by OpenAI, the people who have written it. They have put in some safeguards to stop you being able to build a bio bomb that would cause all sorts of damage. It's got lots of little guardrails in there that stops you ordering explosive materials and assembling a bomb via its agentic actions. But there are still lots and lots of things that it could do wrong, and we need to think about those. So here we are, I'm running in agent mode. I'm looking for a simple example. So I ask it to log into my account at The Economist and summarize recent articles on AI, creating a PowerPoint presentation that focuses on new, positives, negatives, and the big unknowns spelt wrongly. It opens up a window in the browser. It creates a virtual computer. And in the virtual computer, it goes to the Economist website and does various things, but then it gets to the login. And when we get to the login, the way I've got it configured, I have to take over the session. So now I am typing into the virtual computer created by Agent Mode. And I type in my login details and then I give control back. So it is now in there. Now, this could have been my bank account. This could have been a wide range of different things. This could be my Salesforce, all sorts of things like that. I've gone with a fairly safe example. It's logged into The Economist. It's now going through The Economist, finding all the articles on artificial intelligence. It does lots and lots of things to do with formatting. It's finding information, creating slides ready. At the end of that, 21 minutes later, it produces quite a good written report about the various things that are going on in the world of AI around the world and tasks. And it creates a PowerPoint, and I get the button there to download it. So I download that and it generates a PowerPoint. Okay, the PowerPoint sucks. This is the point I was making earlier. I don't find any of the LLMs make good PowerPoints. They can make really quite good reports, but I wanted to test the power of this system to be able to use my login credentials, to be able to call different tools, to follow through a reasoning path and then deliver an outcome. I've also used it to log into my YouTube account and create a summary for me of which YouTubes are viewed the most often, what sort of comments do they have, what do they have in common. I've used it in other of the services like that, where if you ask it to do things like create a spreadsheet with information, it's really effective. Imagine that you're doing that and you're doing it on a scheduled basis. So maybe every day it's going to go through all of your incoming emails and tell you the ones that you've not answered and how you should answer them and what you should do with them, using all of your credentials. At the end of creating this demonstration, the next thing I did was I logged back into The Economist and changed my password. All of a sudden, you're probably going to feel a lot happier that you've got two-factor authorization when you're using these tools, because you know, even if it knows your password, it's going to struggle to do stuff that has two-factor authorization. So what are the issues that we need to consider when we're looking at agents and agentic AI? Letting an agent log into apps is like giving somebody your password. Now, we know that people do that. Sometimes one company is quite naughty and they'll have one license and they'll post the password and the login details on the whiteboard. But it's not very safe. And potentially this could be your credit card and your password that is going to be in there. So we need to keep an eye on that. We need new skills to be able to deploy agents. So I'm going to come back to my recommendation, which is make lots of agents, because I think you need to build that skill up. If you're trying to work out how do I automate my processes at work, multiple agents is part of that. But the next level is how do you get agents that call agents? And that's called orchestration. And that is going to be a key skill we're going to need to develop. How do we check compliance? One of the things that we've noticed, because Will's been playing around with this as well, is sometimes you will ask your agent to do something and it looks like it's done it, but actually when you go there, you'll find it didn't complete the task. So it wasn't compliant. And where is the legal responsibility? If I, as an employee of the Acme company, invoke an agent written for me by Apple that doesn't do what I think it's going to do, because it's very hard for me to have checked what happened in the middle of that process. So we need to find out about the legal responsibility and about compliance. How are we going to protect privacy and security? I could, for example, program the ChatGPT in agent mode to log into a social media platform and send a message to every single person out there, and it would just work its way through. Now, at some point, the social media platform would spot this and stop it, but it would be a real nuisance. So how are we going to control this? The security. We know that a lot of attacks and hacking are caused by password sharing, accidental password release. And how can we detect errors and bias? So if we've got an agent calling an agent, then we have a new type of problem, because if you are doing a one-to-one, you ask your ChatGPT a question, it gives you back an answer, there's a good chance that you're going to spot an hallucination. That looks a bit odd, I'll cross-check it. But if an agent is calling an agent, you won't see that the hallucination has been passed from one place to another. And if the second one's reporting has got nothing to do with that connecting information, you won't see that an hallucination underpinned that going through. And so maybe you're looking for which stocks and shares to buy, and somewhere in that network an hallucination was passed from A to B or from B to C, and when D gives you a whole set of logical reasons to buy these stocks and shares, or buys them on your behalf, you won't know that hallucination was in the process. So we've got a lot of new checking to bring into this. So our recommendations, start with basic agents. Start with things that are just going to talk to you. You're going to use instructions, they're going to come back and you're going to cross-reference them. Then make them a little bit more powerful. You're going to put in knowledge into those. Maybe you're going to put triggers into them to act at different times a day. Create lots of agents. If you want to automate your processes, you really want to be looking at trying to have an agent for this and an agent for that. We were talking to somebody the other week who I think they said had over 100 GPTs that they were using to help them automate processes. And that's the sort of thing. But with delegated authority, move cautiously. I'm pretty much only using it for experimentation, and I'm hoovering up and tidying up at the end of every exercise. It is the future. This, when we have the right levels of authorization, when we have the right levels of checking, this is where it's going to be. But we want to move there cautiously. So thank you very much, and we look forward to your questions.
Thank you, everyone. And I think Ray's just unmuting himself and ending the presentation recording.
No, the recording will still be recording this because people, I'm sure, would like to hear the answers to all of the questions. I can't see the video panel, but you should be able to see me. So Will, if you can turn on your camera as well.
Yes, my camera is on.
And in fact, I'm going to stop sharing the screen, and then there we are. So can you guide us through? Because I can see there are an enormous number of questions. And so let's try to find a logical sequence through.
Yeah. Well, I'm going to start with the person that I said I was going to respond to first, and that's the way I'm going to proceed. If in a few minutes your question's not been asked, feel free to re-ask it. There was a lot of questions. I probably have missed some. So the first one from here, from Sarah. For folks who have tried multiple tools, which do you think does the best job of creating questionnaires using an agent?
There's not that much of a difference between them. I'm going to explain why in a moment. But the best one today might be not the best one next week because the rate of change is so fast. And you've got a trade-off between power and speed. So if I'm running in ChatGPT, I'd almost never use O3. It has to be something that really won't solve with one of the like O4 Mini or something like this, or even 4.0. So I'm balancing off speed against power. What makes an enormous difference is the quality of the instructions and the quality of the knowledge. So the more knowledge you can upload to say, these are our rules, we never want to a good thing to do is to have, we never want to ask questions that look like this, because having not cases in the knowledge base helps it as well. You can add up, here is the exact formatting we use and all of these sort of things in the knowledge as well. And that will make a real difference. I find I spend most of my time in ChatGPT and Gemini. Those are the two that I find they are, I think, technically at the moment, the most powerful of the LLMs. The between the O3 model and Gemini 2.5 Pro are right up there. But it's more about the convenience of the interface and how easily I can put them together to create that.
Absolutely. I think well, you finished there with how much it integrates with your other tools would be the other factor. So your knowledge base, your instructions. But then if I was going to decide which one to use, if I'm going to be working with PowerPoint and Excel for sure, I'm going to use Copilot, even if it is lagging behind ChatGPT. But if I'm using more open source tools that work with ChatGPT, then I might pick that one. And a follow-on question that actually is probably a good setup for us. Curious if there's a deep dive training available, or even better, examples or templates for creating the instructions for an agent to generate questionnaires in house formats.
Um, we haven't done anything on a specific task, so we've looked at it in the context of using agents and GPTs in the past. We've looked at it in terms of quantitative of studies. I think that there is potentially some space there for something collaborative, and I did see that Scott posted something in the chat stream around that. What I think is really comes down to is it'd be nice if there were two templates, one which is a standard house style knowledge and another one which was a standard set of instructions. And those two together would be very easy for someone to take and drop it into another platform and then modify the house style to be exactly what they wanted it to be, because it is much easier to modify a document than create a document.
Absolutely. And that leads nicely on to Scott. Oh, so on that one, there are several of our courses that are available for purchase on ResearchWise AI. These are paid for recordings. Do have sections where Ray creates a agentic questionnaire builder, either on Copilot or ChatGPT, but they're a section of a larger course. Moving on to Scott's question. I'm experimenting with creating an agent to generate questionnaires now, loading in a proprietary model and system to use as a framework for all the questionnaire generation. Just starting and seeing a few limits for uploading my training data, which is a lot of files. I'd love to hear what you and Ray have seen for trying to customize an agent based on extensive data as an overriding instruction set.
So I would do it in multiple steps. And I'm also going to talk about something nerdy, first of all, the context window. So every large language model has a context window. That's how much stuff, I'm going to anthropomorphize now, how much stuff it can hold in its brain at once. If you think about it like a computer, the context window is the RAM and the rest of it's the hard disk. So you can load up lots of files, but they might sit on the hard disk and they're not in its thinking. So you want to have a look at the model and see what is the context window. And quite often these days, it's about 200,000 tokens, which I guess is about 160,000 words. So it's quite a lot, but it's not as big as your really big sets of databases. So you're going to want to pre-process that information, go through it and extract principles from that information, extract rules from that information. And that's going to help you bring it forward. And you also want to take out bad examples in that data as well. So you've got something now which is more coherent. A lot of the large language models have a limit of 10 files or 20 files. So you would have one file which is past questions we have used, another file which is questions we do not use, another file which is types of exercises or projectives or whatever it is that you want to keep combining together. And then you can bring that in. And then it's all about the instructions and about experimentation. And when it doesn't, and it's a lot about when it doesn't produce what you want, for you then to ask it, what prompt should I have used to get this answer? You gave me this answer, but I wanted this answer. How should I have changed my question? And that sort of logic will help you drive towards that. So pre-processing, being aware of the context window size. At the moment, some of the Gemini models have got a context window of about 1 million tokens. So much more of it's going to come in for processing.
Thank you, Ray. And with that, I'm going to move on to a sort of cluster of questions that came up around the Economist terms and conditions. Um, were you able to do a quick check on that one, or do I need to
No, but
look?
I think that I'm getting, do we break the terms and conditions? So this is also going to be true with LinkedIn. I 100% don't know. I'm fairly comfortable with what I did with The Economist. I logged into The Economist. I was still in the account. Um, and I've gone in through a virtual browser instead of a Safari browser. That doesn't seem to conflict with anything. I'm one person and I have done about the amount of reading that one person conceivably could have done in that time. So that seems within the realms of what ought to be an acceptable use. If, on the other hand, I had logged into LinkedIn and I've got 9,500 people there, and I sent them all in a personalized message, reading some stuff from their profile, and then adding some stuff that I wanted to sort them out and send it to them. That would look really odd because that would be bulk processing. It's the sort of things that people do with third-party tools that LinkedIn doesn't like. But I don't think most of the terms and conditions will be written for agentic browsers yet. This is all new territory, so expect to see things coming forward.
That was going to be effectively part of my answer, and I have taken a quick look, is that the language is not going to be out there for most companies to discuss different parts of AI. Too little of it's been tested in court. And so sometimes there's a sort of whitewash, you can't use AI, but then they're even using AI on their own. There is different levels. And so in your example, we could try to at least explain that it's fair use under the best way to create this presentation. But I certainly wouldn't set off an agentic AI to go harvest data from The Economist. Certainly. Right, to keep going with the questions, in which a whole lot more have come in, and my computer has stopped working. Right. um, will we end up with so much AI content out there that we will diverge from what human thought really is? That's a
So,
very
yeah, I
difficult
mean, this
question.
is really not really an agent one, but it's a major issue. Um, so we do not want AI to learn from AI. There's a couple of problems that happen when you do that. One is drift, that it moves away from what is really happening. And the other is model collapse, where the whole thing just stops making sense. The term that they use for it is cannibalism. And it's already a major problem in image generation. Evidently, more than 50% of all the images on the internet have been created or modified by AI. So it now can't help but learn from AI stuff. So when we are looking to get new material, new learning, we really do want to know that the AI is learning from good sources. And if you think about it, that's might be a major advantage to people like Meta, who will have Facebook as a resource, where they will be able to tell a lot of the time about whether somebody is a person or not, and those sorts of things.
And we've got a useful question here, but perhaps maybe a little bit of clarity to what the question means before we try and answer. So someone asked here, you spoke about compliance. Have you found a foolproof way to ensure compliance? And the reason I will give a bit of a passing answer on this from my perspective, then hand it to Ray, and then maybe we've not quite answered the question. As far as compliance, in my mind, the foolproof way is to is to document everything, to have consent for everything, permission for everything, and be very transparent about everything. That can keep you compliant in most situations I've come to. So if, for instance, you're processing a client's data, transparently explaining how you're going to process it, where you're going to process it, make sure you've got permission to process it, all these things will keep you compliant. If from the perspective of security, there is of course no foolproof methods of security. But one thing I mentioned in the chat earlier is that so agent can never be the security guard. So, for instance, don't give the agent the full access to the entire database and then say the agent has to determine which users are allowed to access which data. That is very vulnerable. Agents are easily tricked and confused. The security needs to reside behind the agent, and the agent is only allowed to communicate with the data it needs to communicate with for this session, and then that's it, and then it disappears again. So that's from the data compliance perspective, but maybe Ray, you can take a wider view of compliance in general.
Yeah, so I think transparency is a really key part, so that you're going on and the keeping the records. We would like things like the agentic browser. If I use an agentic browser to post on my behalf, I would want it to say posted on behalf of Ray by Comet, for example, which is some of the procedures we have. They're not always followed when humans act on people's behalf. So we know that for a lot of social media stars, they're not doing their own posting. They'll have people doing it. And some of them have a method of indicating whether it was the real person or not. We want those building in, but also whether something's actually done. And I think there is scope for compliance agents to be built in, which are running from a separate system whose job is this agent said it finished it. Yeah, I can tell you it did. So I think that sort of compliance there is part of it. So we are running into the end of time. I've got some more time. So I'm
Yep.
happy to take a few more questions. If you do need to drop off the call, you will be able to get back to the recording.
We've got two more questions I've just found in the Q&A tool, which I'm about to ask. But just on that other point, continuing the compliance question, and someone in the chat jokingly asked, what happens if we get one AI to check another AI's work? Does it spiral until the world explodes or something of that nature? And I was going to say that actually that is exactly what we're doing within agentic AI all the time, is that we can't trust them not to hallucinate. But they're actually pretty good at marking people's work. Now, they don't care if the people there is a real person or another AI. So if you give them the rules and then tell them to mark another AI's work, they will come back with a scoring of how they got on and some feedback. And then you feed that back to the original AI and they go round and round and round again until your compliance AI says, yes, it is compliant. Now, that obviously is not foolproof again, but that is exactly how we build layers of security into this. Right, got a question here. What are some of the key differences between the agents in LLMs and the builder platforms like Make, Zapier, and N8N?
So most of those are a more sophisticated version of if then this, if that then
If,
this. So they're a bunch of ifs and they connect together with pipes that make things happen. And they can be really powerful. So we use Zapier, for example. N8N is, I find it's a bit complex, and I worry about the security of all of these systems because they're all linking together. They sort of have your passwords as well, in the way they link them together, but they are, by the time you've created a whole thing, it is a specific agent, I guess, Will. So if we take the process when people buy one of our courses through Ticket Tailor, it creates a webinar registration for them in Zoom, and it creates a billing thing with Stripe and so on. That combination of actions is a one-trick pony agent, I guess.
uh, yes, absolutely. We've got a. I'm glad I'm not a legislator. We've got a challenge ahead of us with how to define AI and agents. Um, Autopilot in planes in the 1950s would also count as an agent under a lot of these definitions, even though it's purely mechanical. Um, And another question, have you tried using agents with the connectors function to review files stored on your drive? It seems like agents may revolutionize knowledge management, especially for SMEs. Uh,
So a little bit, but it's
Actually, just very
yeah,
quickly, just introduce that in 20 seconds, perhaps, because not everyone knows what connectors
yes.
are.
So now quite a lot of the platforms will allow you to connect the LLM to your in-house data files with your permission. So you can be in ChatGPT, you can let it access your Google Drive, and then when you run, for example, even just deep research, you can say, I want you to do deep research, but I don't want, let's imagine we were SMR and we were looking at the historic database of all the global market research reports. We could say to deep research, hey, I want you to look at that and find 5 trends that have never been described as a trend by looking right across all those. And it's going to use its reasoning model and it's going to apply that and it's going to come back and bring back trends. So opening up secondary data, data in your own files, is massively powerful. You've got to be confident that this stuff is secure. Um, and we can perhaps talk a little bit more about that later. But that opens up a lot of new possibilities. And when I've run it, it always seems really interesting. I am still a little bit nervous about letting ChatGPT access some of my in-house files. I know the theory that it should be secure, but some of these things take time and experience.
Yes, and to follow on from that, I've been using it already, not just connected to Google Drive, which is quite useful, but also connected to our GitHub, so it can read all the code and also the configuration and things that sit behind the code. So it becomes easier, for instance, to ask what is the cutting threshold used across all of our different apps. And so I can find the one app that's got a different cutting threshold and go fix it. That makes work a lot faster than me opening up 6 different code repositories and
Yeah.
trying to find all the different configs.
Can you just very quickly say what GitHub is to the
Oh,
70%
sorry,
who
GitHub
won't have heard
is
of it?
where software engineers and others store code and configuration files in a way that's version controlled so we don't lose any. And it's a big, yes, it's the biggest repository of code as it stands. We've got a challenging question here from Mike. It's a philosophical question and potential legal one. I saw a sign went out of the house earlier at a park which said dogs should not walk on the grass. I explained that to my dog, let it off the lead, and it ran across the paths and the grass. Who is in the wrong? I am likening AI to being the dog. Any thoughts here, Ray and Will?
Um, this all needs to be tested in court, unfortunately, and it's likely to come to different conclusions in different parts of the world. Um, so this is kind of what I was saying earlier. If I, as an employee, do something, I've used a piece of software written by Apple to fulfill a contract with Google, and something doesn't happen, then where is the liability? And so we're seeing a lot of deregulation in the United States. The AI Act in the EU is much more restrictive, but not as restrictive as they wanted it to be. Originally, they were saying that any AI program would be responsible for misuse by that AI program by anybody. And they luckily backed on from there. But this is all the area we need to experiment in. And historically, it's been like that before. We saw this with the growth of the internet. Laws and procedures follow. So you don't want to be on the bleeding edge of any of these experiments.
To answer that question from my perspective, I would say if the person who sold me the dog guaranteed through contract that it would listen to instructions, if I was criminally liable, I wouldn't be able to hand that liability over via contract, although I could sue them. If I was only civilly liable, I may be able to hand that liability over. But ultimately, I am accountable for my dog's behavior. And that relates to a question earlier when we're asking what can't agents do? Well, my
Hmm.
main answer is they cannot be accountable. at least within the UK legal framework, US legal framework. I'm not going to speak for all of them. I'm not a lawyer, but they cannot be accountable. So if they're going to respond for your emails, the reason partly I would have it say AI on behalf of Will is partly because of that. I want to make it clear that I perhaps haven't written this and therefore to take everything with a pinch of salt because I am still accountable for everything that's coming out there.
So there's a very simple question from somebody, so that's always nice. When will where will the recording? It will be on the NewMR website. You should get an email from Zoom probably in about 5 days. I'll see if I can change it so it comes out sooner that tells you where it will be. But if you go to the NewMR website tomorrow, it will be on there. And if you go to the event, today's event will have a link to the play again. You could go to the play again page, that will have it. You could also search new MR agents YouTube, and by the middle of tomorrow, that would take you straight there as well. But you should get a message from Zoom. But it's we we set it to 5 days just in case there's a hiccup. This one should be relatively straightforward to edit, so I would expect it to be there tomorrow.
Great. And are there any last questions from anyone before we wrap up? There's an interesting message here from Craig, which I can echo, saying that ChatGPT agent did a great job telling me about my top performing LinkedIn posts, and more importantly, why. And that's certainly something I've seen with my work is getting AIs to review my work very quickly, tell me what could be improved about it, which is easy for me to reject if I disagree, and fairly easy for me to incorporate if I agree. So it's a great way to improve your writing, improve your outputs.
Yeah, I mean, this is the sort of thing that people have been doing for a long time, and you would often export all of the stuff from your Google Ads or from LinkedIn and the rest of it, and then do your analysis. And what the agent mode is allowing you to do is to go there and find it out, and not necessarily find it out the way you would do. That is actually one of the benefits of using ChatGPT and things like that.
Great. I don't think we've got any more questions. Oh, no, I might be wrong. Sorry. Right. How do you balance the exciting potential of connectors with the security concerns?
Carefully. I mean, you do need, if you are not tech, and I'm lucky that I've got Will and I'm relatively tech myself, then you need someone to go through that mechanism to see what it is. We've both had a look at agent mode, and as Will, I think, said in the chat stream, with its current authorization, we wouldn't trust it for almost anything. That it's all around the experimental lightweight stuff at the moment, but it is clearly going to come through. Theoretically, we can see how delegated authorization should work, and yeah, it should come through.
And on that experimenting side, for my example is I got it to try and book me a haircut. So we're not challenging it with the super data, we're not having it log into our banking or anything like that. Go slowly with this. It is very exciting. And additionally, I take into account what's the worst case scenario, and then how reversible is it as well. So I've had it look at code, and it has not yet made any changes, but at least with code changes, they are almost always reversible because the way we save code, you can always roll it backwards. I would not give it free reign in our Google Drive to rearrange files, because what happens if it deleted those files? Can I get them back? I'm not so sure. So I would always take a very risk-adverse approach with agents.
Okay, we seem to have got just to the polite phase now, with lots of people saying thank you. So that's fantastic. So, this is quite a key point, I think, and I'll try to keep it on the screen. Are Insight Teams researchers disciplined enough to create large automations, especially as small check stages seem to have a better quality? I would absolutely, absolutely, absolutely work with small automations, because some of the things, if we do big automations, you're much more likely to get it wrong. It's not, you're not going to have that feel for how it's developing. And anyway, some of the steps that we do at the moment are only necessary because of the way we do business. As we start to automate them, we will probably remove some of the steps. So if you take data checking, we do that at the moment because the data that arrives with us at the agency has got too many things we need to look into. If, on the other hand, we could have our systems talk to the data collection people so it all happens before we get it, then that would completely change it.
Great. Thank you, Ray. I think we have come to the end of everything now.
Okay, well, with that, thanks everyone. We'll make sure that we try to get it all posted tomorrow. Bye for now.